Prime Minister Julie Van Dusen, CBC, is there any way to protect Canadians who are going about their daily lives?
I can't help but notice the increase in instances when this despicable piece of trash seems to think that this is all real funny. It's not funny. This was the little press conference that took place after the Toronto van attack, and at this point I'm exceedingly sickened at how the entire subject matter of public safety is weighed rather dismissively with a smile and then overpowered by the usual talking points. And I say I'm exceedingly sickened at this point because it's one thing for you to lie and smile and give corny little smirks about all the money you heedlessly waste. But when we're talking about people's lives, people's futures, and in fact the lives and futures of future people, I find it highly disturbing that you think this is all so fucking funny. It's not funny, you festering piece of trash. In fact, you're not even a piece of trash. You're like the slime that leaks out the cracks in the bottom that stinks beyond anything that can be verbally described.
When assailants are choosing soft targets more and more?
Obviously, we need to continue to reflect on the changing situations in which we're in, but and do everything we can to keep Canadians safe, but we cannot, as Canadians, choose to live in fear every single day as we go about our daily business. We need to focus on doing what we can and we must to keep Canadians safe while we stay true to the freedoms and values that we all as Canadians hold dear.
Reflect on the changing situations that we're in. I'd rather reflect on your little performance here first. You give a passive mention about protecting citizens, almost as an afterthought really, as it seems you almost forgot to mention it at first. And that's because you were too preoccupied with moving onward to your infamous sales pitch about fear, and then of course to your flagship pet project headline that basically says what we really need to be protecting the most is your welcome mat of diversity. Because that's what it all boils down to, doesn't it? Although I notice lately you've held back on using the word diversity itself. Likely because someone even as dim-witted as you finally realizes when something has been trampled to death. So instead you babble out statements like freedoms and values that we hold dear. You don't know the first thing about values. To you, that means the welcome mat. I mean, you even gesture with your hands as if it's right there in front of you for all to see. A welcome mat that declares we'll welcome with open arms any fucking barbarian that comes from any barbaric culture, despite the fact that the barbarian in question has no intention of shedding the barbaric culture, and on the contrary wants it to breed and fester here. And people can scream all they want that the van attack has no connection with Islam or immigration or open sloppy borders. It doesn't matter, and not in the sense that the attack doesn't matter, but in the sense that no matter what happens, he's still selling his diversity pitch. It's just a different twist on the way he euphemizes returning ISIS fighters as foreign travelers that are facing the same rejections and discriminations that Italian immigrants faced when they landed on the shores of North America long ago. Those are the words of a bona fide quack. Reflect on the changing situation. What, the changing situation of trying to normalize all the madness in the name of diversity? The same way this piece of shit thinks that his Islamic terrorism needs to be accepted as part and parcel of a big city? So let me reflect on something else, you slime puddle. This country was not built on your stupid ideas, nor was it built on Islamic ideas. I'll tell you what, it wasn't even built on religious ideas as the core premise. The progress of Western culture was built on the very separation of state from the church and all its dormant, sacrificial, anti-life, anti-thinking, self-imposed guilt program where baby is a sinner that needs to repent before he's even shit his first pair of Pampers. The West was built on ideas evoked from freedom of speech. That's why you don't nurture, pander to, baby, or cradle religious or cultural ideas that demand others can't be critical of their religion. It's anti-liberty, it's anti-life, or anti-democratic if you fancy the word democratic. And that's why things like M103 are not democratic, despite what the echoes within your empty skull seem to be telling you. Which shows just how dark, damp, and empty your thought process is. And that train of thought sort of reminded me that I should revisit an earlier point I made long ago in my Between the Cracks video that shows how these people continually step on their own landmines because their thought process aimlessly wanders around in obscurity. It was this tweet of Iqra Khalid, and the point I had made was that it doesn't occur to her that she's making a case against her own motion. You can see she's loaded on the dumbness there that indicates it wouldn't be a good move to really consider that Sharia stuff. That's why I mentioned in the video the third rail. We want to stay well clear of that. No one seems to ask them why. That's why in the video I put it like this. What's the matter? You're not afraid of being one of 4 wives, are you? But you see, with that in mind, it's not the Canadian way to have 4 wives, because it's not the Canadian way to conceptualize women as luggage. Duh! But hey, are you up for an honor killing, or perhaps a stoning or 2? No, I didn't think so. So again, she doesn't realize that she's making a case against her own motion. She's demonstrating a perfectly rational case and reason to be Islamophobic. It's scary these people are elected officials because they're such dimwits, intellectually and philosophically bankrupt. Perhaps Ikra Khalid and maybe Miriam Monsef, since she says she's fascinated by Sharia, should watch this International Times video that shows how a woman that was accused of burning part of the Quran was brutally and systematically beaten to death collectively by a bunch of men and then set on fire to burn while they cheered. It's almost 8 minutes long, so I'm just going to spool it ahead here, but the link is still there if you want to see it. I checked it the other day and took the screenshot. It's called The Killing of Farkunda by John Woo, etc. But I wanted to point out something that's at the end here, where it states this. She was found innocent because she did not burn a Quran. In other words, the punishment would have been justified had it been proven that she did burn it. This is, of course, insanity. This animalistic way of thinking does not belong on planet Earth, never mind in Canada. And nor do the ideas that lead to this way of thinking belong on planet Earth. But it doesn't seem to make a shred of difference how disgusting it's all proven to be. The moral cowards will continue to make excuses for it. And you see them stepping on their own landmines quite regularly when discussing the Sharia topic. I see good old Wendy Mesley recently did another one of those Target specials where she tries to blow dark clouds into your living room with talk about a rise of dangerous anti-Islam groups. It's another ridiculous episode of her fear-mongering, but instead I want to dial it back to a similar one where she was interviewing this idiot here that calls himself a national security reporter.
A number of the soldiers that you talked to referred to Sharia law and that they had to get organized to stop Sharia law from coming to Canada. That seems to be a pretty common thread.
It's a very common thread.
What did you think of that?
I think that I've been looking at this kind of thing for a very long time, from the perspective of a national security reporter, and the threat of that is very minimal. And the interesting thing is a lot of them were quoting news sources saying, no, I saw videos of refugees saying, I'm coming to Canada and I'm going to push for Sharia law.
It's a big issue in the alt-right groups in the United States as well,
Exactly.
that Sharia law is coming and we have to organize to stop that.
And it's the fear of the Muslim hordes. That's almost how they describe it. And it's not something that's based, as far as my research shows, in fact.
So where is this information coming from? To them, do you think?
You know, I don't want to say fake news, but I want to say discreditable news sources. You know, it started with ISIS. I started seeing people quoting these very bizarre news sources, not recognizing them. And then since the election, it's just gone up.
It's amazing to me how they overlook the fact that they're recognizing the Sharia as a threat and, identical to Ikra Khalid, presenting a case in favor of Islamophobia. They can't deny that because they're always hurriedly trying to assure and convince everyone that it's not coming here, don't be frightened, Sharia is not coming here. But if you respond by saying, that's great because we don't want any of that shit over here, then they snarl back at you for being an Islamophobe and a racist. And again, identical to Ikra Khalid, they think you're a dumb dummy for thinking it might come here. Duh! But a racist Islamophobe if you don't want to hop on the welcoming wagon of Islam. And Sharia is a central component of Islam, and anyone that tries to rebut that is just another ignoramus living in denial. And you have to be pretty ignorant to be using the racist card to defend religion. And here again, I'll just flash back to my video Between the Cracks. Like the way you transform the term Muslim into a race of people to peddle your poison. Islam is an ideology woven into religion. It's not a race. You can't join a race. Notice you never hear them proclaim, Islam is the fastest growing race today. No, because that would sound epically stupid and reveal them for the idiots they are. So that's why they always say it's the fastest growing religion. And besides, if they use the word religion, it automatically means it's nice. But if you criticize the not so nice religion, you're a racist. Go figure. You are born into a race. You can't be born as an idea. Fuck, can't you people see that? It's so plain as day. But so now we see they've basically applied a whole new, unique twist to the Islamophobia angle, because now they're sort of giving it a dual purpose by applying the phobia/fear aspect as being an unnecessary fear of it coming here, Whereas when they started out with this whole thing with the word Islamophobia, it was denoting that there was nothing to fear at all about anything, anywhere, anytime. Now the tune they're tooting seems to be, don't be silly, there's no fear of it coming here. And by extension of that, they're recognizing that it's worth fearing. Again, they wouldn't be trying to convince everyone not to worry if it wasn't something to be worried about. It's all Looney Tunes, loony fucking tunes. We have reached an age of total mental dysfunctionality that is utterly inexcusable. And it's really alarming when this circulatory, dysfunctional way of thinking is considered mainstream, living in a mental state of convoluted concepts that perpetually clash. It makes me cringe that they posture themselves as examples of righteous citizens. Then they have the nerve to talk about credible reporting and smile together. Aren't we such wonderful lying trash that's helping turn Canada into a cesspool of sewage with our Stone Age thinking and spineless moral standings? You're such fucking filth. What's more, I don't know why trash like you continue wasting your breath lecturing and trying to convince the public we're not going to choose to live in fear when it couldn't be more obvious that's exactly what you want. You wouldn't keep saying it if you didn't want the air to be pungent and thick with it. Gotta keep reminding people, right? Wouldn't want all your efforts of engineering it to go without credit. You're such disgusting hypocrites because you scold everyone else about hate and fear, and yet you are the generators of fear, and you are the ones who love to hate because you sponsor hate within your moral bankruptcy. Further insult is only added to it all with the fact that you demand that people pull the plug on their brain. It must be a really empty feeling every morning when you wake up knowing that your entire life is based on fooling gullible people. What a fucking achievement. Exemplified with how you're still using your social media to send nauseating messages that are so disgustingly hypocritical it gives me a headache. Truth in journalism. The problem with your little message is that most of the ones that have lost their lives were reporting on the truth you trash are trying to hide from the world. This is your kind of journalism. It's actually quite obscene that you like to preach about systemic racism when that is precisely what you're blueprinting in your grand globalist schemes, intentionally instilling a revenge motive in the minds of all the unruly packs and mobs that you're bringing into this country, along with the ones you're allowing to flow across our borders. This is what systemic racism is. It's written right there in the headlines. Looky there, right there, see? It's an urgent call from white people to water down the white people. Funny how trash like this never include themselves within the confines of their virtue-signaling sewage. But they're all shouting the same demand for a white boy guilt trip, with a grand assertion that all the packs and mobs deserve their payback now after all the centuries of white colonialism. But guess what? There's a sad little detail they're not telling you that goes along with this globalist blueprinting that's occurring now in present times, that we could classify as a malignant model of a reverse-style Gladio program, something along those lines. To be more specific, take Haiti for example. Hillary and her crew of pirates completely molested Haiti while capitalizing on the destruction that the earthquake caused, and it can't even be ruled out that they triggered the earthquake. They love disasters because then they get to swoop in and do organ harvesting and place people in positions of dependency and snatch girls for sex trafficking and snatch children for organ harvesting or the decrepit child abuse rings and cults, all while pretending to help, and rake in millions of dollars from people that are fooled into believing that foundations established by the Clintons or Frank Giustra or Carlos Slim or the Trudeaus are run with good intentions. Well, they're not, and that's because they have no good intentions. In Haiti, most of the reconstruction and aid money was utilized in other parts of the country that wasn't even affected by the quake, to build swanky hotels and other facilities that benefit all the pirates involved with the exploiting. But the main point this is leading to is this: if you exploit a country and harvest its people and resources, and then intentionally allow many of those surviving people passage to come and enter our country, with all such people having it gelled firmly in their mind that they're the victims of the big bad imperialist white folk at large, well now, they see it as payback time, and voila, you have a revenge-style Gladio program installed within the country that is not acting as a standing army or hidden militia to defend the country, but to act in aggression against it. You can see this clearly happening, especially when we not only see our cowardly politicians blindly following along and blatantly encouraging it and them, but the stupid fucking people as well. And that's the whole idea, and how the likes of George Soros and the rest of them destabilize a country. I wasn't kidding when I said we are living in an age of disgraceful intellectual bankruptcy. And yet they like to talk about mental health. None of this is healthy from a mental standpoint. You people don't know what normal is. This is like a mental freak show of some sort. All at the expense of what? Being nice? I don't see it as being nice or any kind of a representation of love. I see it as being an ignorant sucker. Just as you want to play this dangerous game of trying to prop up this quintessential character of the moderate Muslim, like a glamour show on flimsy scaffolding. And all the glamorizing is supposed to confirm legitimacy while ignoring that Islam itself has still preached and pursued in its original doctrine of rooted desires for conquest of the world motivated by selective hate propelled by threats and acts of terrorism.
Our number one and top priority is to protect and defend our communities. It is not to assimilate and to please any other people in authority. Our obligation is to our young people, is to our women, and make sure our women are protected in our community. And our top priority, even higher than all those priorities, is to please Allah and only Allah. We are never to cower to the powers that be. We are never to give up any part of our identity so somebody else can open a door for us. If a door doesn't open, guess what we do?
I despise that bitch. Moderate Muslim my ass. Incidentally, I never hear anyone raising the question as to why are you really hauling in on the reins of your beloved faith and so proudly claiming to be devoted but moderate about it. I thought it required 100% devotion and participation, not moderation. Oh yeah, that's right, silly me. I forgot to enter the gray zone, where it suddenly doesn't matter anymore and we become selective about the sacred book they say is sacred and forbidden to be selective about. Let's face it, that's basically how the Bible is treated today. Thank goodness. We don't see anyone getting stoned to death for fixing their car on Sunday, so that's certainly a test for some credit. And you don't hear anyone calling themselves moderate Christians, at least not for the same reasons that Muslims are so hasty to say they're moderate. It's not hard to see the two outlooks are practically diametric at this point. And this line of conversation allows me to finally get around to commenting on a certain individual that has a tendency to say and do shit that does nothing but a disservice to the entire battle. This guy here, Kevin J. Johnson. I have no idea what kind of shit comes out of his mouth these days because I don't check, but I just want to point out that when he first appeared on the scene, he was proving to be more of a liability to the cause than anything else. And don't worry, I'm about to fully explain. He was shooting his mouth off about how he'll give a big juicy cash reward to anyone that can secretly record some hate speech they might discover being spoken in prayer rooms or in school classrooms, etc. What I'd like to know is how you can be so foolish as to not see the damage that does to the overall cause. This is saying that if you can't find any extracurricular remarks of hate that satisfy you in your secret surveillance, then everything is otherwise okay, and bad stuff is only happening behind secret curtains. You see what I'm saying? Catch my drift? If not, then look at it this way. Just look in their sacred book if you want hate speech. You don't need to do any secret reconnaissance in search of words or whispers to secretly record. You can find it on the internet. And library cards are still free, and library photocopy machines are still reasonable. But no, you want to be a big shot and offer $1,000 rewards for those who can find inflammatory statements, which, I reiterate, only ignores and undermines the reality that their entire ideology is inflammatory. That should be the focus of the argument, not trying to find something by offering rewards. When you act like a knucklehead like that, all you do is provide ammunition for the media to point to and say how belligerent and shifty the dissenters are. I can be incredibly forthright and quite aggressive in my discourse, but that's just dumb. So I inevitably end up clashing swords with the likes of someone that uses tactics that serve as a disservice more than anything else. Now, he's most certainly correct in the argument that religion doesn't belong in schools. I don't think it belongs anywhere. But to simply say that Islam is only lethal if preached in schools is again turning a blind eye to its overall teachings. Its teachings are morbid enough, but on top of that, they teach that your entire life needs to be engulfed and blanketed by it. That's why they react so hysterically and radically when someone else is displaying or speaking of a different version of the invisible man in the sky. You see, it's all so childish, and it would be hysterically funny if it wasn't so serious and causing so many problems. Of all the things in the world, the very last thing we should be yielding to and nodding submissive approval to are hokey rules and regulations that are notarized through the fables about invisible men in the sky. Can't you see how stupid it all is, and the volcanic powder keg it's building? And so this is why, when it does start leaking into the schools, which it has been for some time now, you get all this squabbling about whose religion isn't getting a fair shake, like little children. I have another old media clip that I've been waiting to use. It's a reporting from down in the United States, but you watch how, with the tide turning, just how peaceful and loving they are, and what kind of tone and atmosphere is developing.
It's a real discrimination. My child should be able to celebrate their holiday.
Anger from Jersey City's Muslim community, a walkout as this city's school board debated and indicated it would not close the schools on Thursday of next week for the Eid al-Adha feast of sacrifice holy day.
We feel alienated from the Board of Education. We feel alienated from this system.
There were tears from a young girl as Muslims realized that even with unanimous city council support a week ago, the school board would not create a new holiday at this last minute.
Security, police, take charge. We're no longer the minority. That's clear from tonight. We're going to be the majority soon.
Nearly 4 hours of debate ended with the school board saying it could not disrupt the lives of others.
Doing this at this point with 6 days' notice for this upcoming holiday is going to cause undue hardship on possibly 5,000 or 10,000 people who are going to have to scramble to get coverage for their children.
And then there was a fairness issue raised by the Jewish community, which does not get days off for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur.
Many of our Jewish members are feeling left out.
School board members did make clear that Muslim children can have an excused religious absence for the Eid holiday next week with no penalty. It did not directly address the issue of Jewish holidays. In Jersey City, Brian Thompson, News 4 New York.
We're no longer the minority. That's clear from tonight. We're going to be the majority soon. 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 We're going to be the majority soon.
We are no longer the minority, we're going to be the majority soon. That's proclaimed as a threat, both her tone and body language. A veiled threat. Religion of peace? Fuck you. Rubbish. You all represent terror. Terror to our way of life.